Hey everybody, it's Tim Larkin talking your self-protection needs. Now today I'm going to cover a topic of the self-defense tool that everyone needs to understand, that everybody needs to know how to operate, but nobody trains in. But before I get into that, please subscribe to the channel, make your comments, hit the notifications, and please share it with somebody that you care about. If you know anybody that needs self-protection information and you like what you see on this channel, it's really important that you share it because it's really hard to get the information out. I don't need to tell you why, but I appreciate you guys are growing this channel super fast, and it's all because of you. So now into today's subject. You know, I get lots of questions from you guys about how to train, what to do, what to focus on, and oftentimes people are just way off. You know, they focus initially on all the wrong things. And so I was thinking about sharing with you from my archives an interview that I did with my buddy Lewis House. Lewis runs a podcast called The School of Greatness. It's a huge podcast. He's wildly successful. He's had me on a couple of times. And in this episode, we discussed why it was so important back then. This is when all the attacks were happening over in Europe, and people were using car bombs, and they were using cars and low-tech items to attack people. And, you know, the subject of violence was really on everybody's mind during this time. And during this interview, I talk about what both genders need, you know, not just men, not just women, but what both genders need to understand when it comes to their self-protection and what's the most important thing to get right first. So I think you're going to really enjoy the interview. Now, listen, I do use women more as an example in this. And the reason being is it's even harder to get women to train in self-defense. But the principles apply to both genders. I think you're going to really like it. I'll make some closing comments after the video, but let's get into the video.
Welcome back, everyone, to the School of Greatness podcast. We have the legendary Tim Larkin in the house. Good to see you, man. Very excited. Been a while. Last time we hung out was at your gun range in Vegas, and I got to shoot some really cool guns with my girlfriend, Jen. And it's good to see you here, man. And I'm excited about...
Love the place, man.
Thank you. And I'm excited about this topic because I think it's timely with a lot of uncertainty, especially in the U.S., but around the world with all these different bombings and attacks and just people feeling unsettled in general. You are one of the leading experts on violence and self-defense in the world, and you've got this book out called When Violence is the Answer, Learning How to Do What It Takes When Your Life is at Stake. Make sure you guys pick this up right now. Amazon and everywhere books are sold. Now, why we were just talking about this before we started. Most people, you were saying, don't feel like they need to protect themselves, or they need to like take training on self-defense. Is that what I heard? Most people, until they get an attack or something happens, they feel like they don't need it.
Yeah,
it's usually what happens.
It's a misunderstanding. So most people think, and not even the idea of violence. They think the idea of training for, say, self-defense or something like that it's really reserved for the physically elite. You know, they see something like the UFC, and they see some of those amazing athletes, and they say, well, geez, I can never be that. So therefore, there's no reason for me to train. Or they go the opposite route, and they say, well, I'm just going to buy a gun. You know, that's the extreme.
Or pepper spray.
Or pepper spray. Yeah. They're going to default to a tool, you know. And the idea is, you know, what makes us, you know, so amazing, what makes us so dangerous at the same time is the human brain. And so it's the idea of engaging your brain first and training your brain. And understanding the principles of violence. And you have to specifically say violence because when we say fighting, fighting can be a lot of different things. You can fight with your friend, you can fight with your mom, you can fight with, you know, it's a very vague term. When you say violence, everybody knows what you're talking about, you know, and that's the idea. That's really what we're worried about. We're worried about another human being, a bigger, faster, stronger human being dominating us. You know, that's probably our most innate fear. And yet we have got to the point in our society where this subject has become so taboo that the only people that have access to it really are the predators or, say, the first responders in a very different manner. The civilian population, the ones that are most affected by violence, have basically been told, hey, don't worry about it. You don't want to train. You don't want to do these things. Just obey the laws.
Right, you'll be okay.
Comply. We'll get here. Well, that's just not the case. We're seeing that more and more, and you see extreme examples like some of the attacks that we've seen lately, where people are using vehicles, or using knives, or using very low tech, violence with intent, and people really don't have an answer to it. And so the idea is, my big goal is to say it's okay to study the subject of violence. It's all right for us to look at it. It doesn't make us violent. It doesn't make us criminal, but it is a life skill everybody should be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to ask the ladies in here, have you guys ever done any self-defense classes?
One time at girls' camp. I was like 15.
One time at girls' camp when you were 15. Have you? No to self-defense.
No self-defense.
Now, do you think this should be a requirement for everyone, not just women in general, because I think those are the individuals that probably experience more attacks or susceptible to more attacks in general, at least in our society. But do you feel like it should be a requirement for all women and for all human beings, whether it be in grade school or middle school or high school, at some point to go through a basic training self-defense class, or when violence comes class?
Yeah. I mean, and people get skewered for this. We had the former Miss America when she accepted, she's in Miss Nevada. And when she got up there, she said, hey, I'm a black belt in Taekwondo, and I think every girl should, learn how to defend herself, just a very vanilla statement.
Yeah.
She got skewered. She was told that, no, you're telling women that they should learn how to protect themselves rather than tell men that they shouldn't be attacking women. I understand that.
Do both.
I absolutely understand it. It's just like, I don't think anybody should, like, this is your studio. I don't think anybody should come in here and rob your studio and take all of your stuff.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you don't lock your doors.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so there's some reality you have to put into this. And with women, I think the subject is just explained wrong to them for the most part. They're taught as a lesser citizen in it. The men, they know how to take care of themselves. Hey, honey, we're going to teach you this way. Male or female, when we train, women, I find women to be better students. They don't try to muscle things. They have a very clear understanding.
They use the technique better, probably.
Very much so. And the interesting thing about women versus men is, you and I have had to navigate inner male aggression. We've had to navigate locker room, stuff where we communicate. Guys communicate sometimes with violence. So we have that social violence that we have to say, is this social violence or is this the real thing? Women don't have that. When they experience violence, it's the real thing. Therefore, their ability to react once properly trained is, pretty instantaneous.
Because they're not roughhousing a lot and experiencing just...
No, they know if a man puts their hands on it, and it is men. Men are the threat to women. Men are the overwhelming majority of incidents involving, physical violence. And that is the biggest threat to women is a male, using violence against a woman. And
do we know the statistics yearly, at least in the U.S., of like how many domestic violence or whatever violence there is?
We had, I had the latest statistics in my last book. I just don't want to give those because it's a couple of years ago, but I did this book a while back. The telling thing for me was I was with, mutual friend of Tony Robbins. Yeah. We were at an event, and Tony, Tony being Tony, he goes, it's a couples event. And he basically asked the crowd, he said, listen, I'm not saying that anything was about to happen or you really felt that. He goes, but I'm saying in the last week, has an incident occurred where you felt there was a potentiality for violence. There was a potentiality for you to experience a violent situation.
In your relationship or in life?
He just put it out like that. Probably less than 5% of the men raised their hands. Mm-hmm. Okay, last week. 95% of the women had their hands up.
Really? Just maybe walking down the street or just feeling
weird. Getting in an elevator, unfamiliar male comes in there. They're far more. Women are far more aware of violence than men for the most part. The potentiality for violence. Yeah. And what's interesting is they also are the most difficult to get in to take training.
Why is that?
They've been told to society it's not, first of all, it's not, ladylike. You have that aspect of it. We're getting kind of past that. And then a lot of the training is not really geared towards women. If I have a woman, we have to assume the threat's always going to be bigger, faster, stronger, male or female. If we're facing something. Women, though, are constantly put in situations where they're supposed to try to compete on athleticism and strength in certain situations in combat sports.
Yes.
what we need to do with women is train them to understand how to injure the human body. Injury to the human body, which is a differentiation. It's putting an injury on the human body that takes away the bigger, faster, stronger aspects of things. There are areas in the human body that are all accessible. We're all weak in areas of our body, So the big thing, the big mind training the mind switch that I get with women is I train them to stop looking at the differences in their attacker and start looking at the similarities. And the idea is, instead of saying, oh my God, this guy's so much bigger than me, he goes, oh, he has a neck like me. Oh, he has a knee like me. She starts recognizing right away all the points that are going to, she can go directly to and get a result if her life is on the line. Yeah,
neck,
all of that.
Knees.
And so, and that's the biggest difference in when you're talking about, using violence to protect yourself, is you have to be able to recognize the similarities in the human body and go after those and ignore all the differences,
Sure.
And it takes a little bit of time to get that across, not a long time, but you just wrap your head around it. Once you make that switch, it's amazing. People laugh all the time. In fact, I was just doing an interview with a friend of mine a while back, and he goes, I had to stop training last year. He goes, because I kept all he saw were targets on the human body when I was talking to people. He had been, and he's trained for years with us and everything. And he was half joking, but he wasn't. That's what I want to give everybody, is the potentiality that, hey, I know exactly where to go and what to do. Should there be a physical altercation, but I don't have to live this crazy paranoid life.
Sure.
I can actually, what's really interesting is the more you study the subject of violence, the more peaceful your life is. It's crazy. It's counterintuitive. But the idea is, it's almost like anything else that you conquer. If you have a fear of swimming and you learn to swim, you no longer are nervous around water anymore or anything like this. Once you understand the tool of violence and how it applies to you and how you can use it, and what you need to respond to and what you don't need to respond to, all of a sudden you look at the world differently and you look at threats differently.
Yeah.
And that's the greatest thing. Yeah, to give people that kind of confidence to understand that.
So, listen, I get that everybody wants to be able to train. You want to be able to punch, kick, and do all the physical aspects of the training. That's the easy part. That's the no-brainer. When to use it, how to think about it, that's what you got to put the time into. Don't get me wrong. You're going to do the physical training. But I know so many people that have done the physical training and they've done none of the mental work. And a couple things happen. Sometimes when it came time to actually do it, they weren't able to. Sometimes people were able to do it, but they weren't able to deal with the aftermath, what it takes if you have to really put injury on the human body. These are things that you need to understand ahead of time. And that's why it's so important that you study the subject. Now, listen, we got a lot of great resources. If you're interested in this, please look at the links below. We can give you far more straightforward information, uncensored, if you do that. But I really enjoy this. Please give me your comments. I'd love your feedback on this. And again, if you haven't checked out Lewis House, please check out the School of Greatness. You'll enjoy it. He interviews a lot of very interesting people. All the best until next time.